Hi everybody, this is Siati. Today I am doing a painting for my daughter and her husband. I have a picture that I took that I just printed out on paper, and I am going to adhere that onto the painting when I'm done. As you can see in the right hand corner, the roundness of her head, she's looking into his eyes and he's actually looking into her eyes, and in the picture there was a tree. So I'm going to be adding a big tree and them are going to be the focal point, but right now I'm just adding the highlights into my painting by putting some blue. I like to mix on canvas more than I do in a mixing a palette. There we go. And what I did is I got all that blue in there, and now I'm cleaning off my brushes. We use dunning paper. Dunning paper is a paper that you use to wrap stuff when you move. Someone gave it to us. So rather than wasting it, when I do projects and get it dirty, I save them so that I can clean off my brushes. And then when I'm done with those, I just crumple them up. I give them to Bill, and he has a garage where he works in with a fireplace and their little wood stove, and that's how he starts his fire with those papers. So it gets recycled. Now I'm adding in the clouds, and the thing about clouds is all you have to do is get some white paint on your brush and you just tap. You tap, 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 gently tapping. And I used to think I messed up the clouds, but it took a while for me to feel comfortable with my clouds. I always feel like they look like they're just, placed in there just to be a cloud. So I've learned to make them look like a cloud. And now I go in with this brush, and you go real soft as soft can be. Bob Ross says 2 hairs and some air, and he's not kidding. You can ruin a cloud by just going too hard. So I am barely touching that with the brush, barely. But it gives it that dreamy, soft, blurry cloud effect that your sky needs. And so now I am mixing in some colors in a tray. Now I was limited on a lot of colors, so I needed more blue highlights, so I just gently touched my brush with the blue. It was a fan brush, and so I could get more blue in there. The canvas was showing through. And that it was cold out there. Now that I feel I'm done with the sky, I'm going to do the water. I clean off my brush I was using that just had the blue, so it saves some dunning paper. And I know it looks like it's going to be dirty, and you won't be able to see their faces anymore in the outline of the tree, but I can still see it. So now I think what I wanted to do was, I didn't want this blue sky to be the exact color. Let's look at my dirty hands. Of the sky, so I found another blue, and the writing was so small at that point I couldn't read it. So I put my blue in on the canvas. Like I said, I like to mix my sky and my water on canvas. It's a good effect. And then I put some white. There we go. I'm putting white underneath it. And where I put the white is where the movement of the water is going to be. So, I like that color already. That is pretty. And when you have movement in water, you need something that it moves around. And where I have that white, I will most likely be putting some rocks in, or I may even go over it with green grass. I haven't really quite decided yet, but I'm just blending back and forth. As you can see, I'm trying to keep away from the right side. This is an oil paint, and I need that picture to adhere. And I know I will have a problem with that picture. I'm curious to see what happens when it is done. But right now I'm just blending that in. And this is when you get a little rough with your canvas with a brush. And that's a good stiff brush that I'm using. You're just grinding those colors in, basically. Yeah, I think I really do like that color. I might end up bringing that color a little bit into to the sky as well. But I just wanted that water to be so pretty for them. So I'm keeping away from as much as I can where their heads are going to be. I did go over her face and I may have trouble in the end getting that to adhere. But right now I just want to make sure that I do get the colors of the blue just right. And I seem to be pretty happy with that. So now I'm thinking about the landscape. Where do I want it? Apparently everything is going to be, the big focal points are going to be on the right. So up here on the left, I am going to throw in a little bit of landscape. I am limited in my colors. I've got green, but I can add other colors to the green. So I start out with a stiff brush, and I just, like the clouds, I tap them all in. And those are my background trees. See, they're just tap, 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 and I have a little inlet. And I take my fan brush and I pull it down, just on the edges to give the water reflection. Sometimes you got to pull down really softly, and depending on your canvas, how wet you got your canvas, and sometimes you just got to pull down a little bit harder. But I'd start out gently at first, and if you're not getting the effect you want, just pull it down. See that? Now there's reflection in the trees. But again, I'll be having moving water, so that reflection will hopefully look like it's moving when I'm done. All right. And I'm going to do it one more time, just to make sure I got that. And if it gets in the white, that's okay. I'm going to be having a rock or something right there, so it doesn't matter. And again, 2 hairs and some air. And that gets out the brush strokes. And it makes the water look like it is moving a little bit. And you have to remember, every time you put something in there, that has to reflect into the water. I have seen people paint on top, what they paint on the bottom. And that would be if you had a nice still day, no wind, I mean. So now I'm going to be tapping in some more color. I have some ochre, which I'm using right now just for some highlights, sticks, twigs, and then I'll be pulling that down into the water as well. Just don't want I need some other colors, Don't want it just look like a little green blob. All right. And this is when you're making landscapes, you just keep adding color on top of color. Sometimes you overdo it. I always overdo it, but you can always go back and fix it. And I will show you how I do that in the end, because I'm sure I'm going to overdo something here pretty quick. So as you can see, I got that going into the water, the reflection of that. Now, you just can't have the green and brown. You're going to need a tree. Those are pine trees, but you're going to need some sticks, some twigs, maybe more grass. You never know. You just keep adding till you feel like it looks the way you want it to look. So I've taken my small brush and I've just rolled it down just rolling it down into the paint to get it to thin out, to make the tip of the brush thinner. And I'm just now going to be adding in some limbs and some sticks, just something to break up that green, and maybe put a big tree right about here. And all my paintings, I will most likely put a little birch tree with some red leaves. Even in the summertime, doesn't matter to me. I always like that the birch tree with the red leaves. I just hope it doesn't take away the focal point of the tree. If it does, then I can cover that up with the leaves of the big tree. And remember, there's going to be a big tree and them as the focal point. So this is just, little background gift. And I reuse these trays like chicken or beef or all of that just for the paints. I love painting better trees with a palette knife than I do with a brush. See the difference between the two trees? One just looks a little, I don't know, whimsical, while the other one starts looking like a tree. So I prefer painting limbs and stuff like that with a palette knife. And also to make little tiny sticks, I do use a palette knife to scrape off some of the paint. And if you make mistakes, you can just scrape off the paint and do it over. And mistakes happen. It's normal. You shouldn't worry about it. Just relax and let stuff happen. Oh, there we go. Getting in there. Now you're going to see right here. This is where I'm talking about scraping in. See that? You don't have a palette knife. You could literally use a butter knife. I've done that once or twice. And I think I like the white tree better than the one I drew in. But that's okay, because I'm going to have leaves, and I will end up probably fixing that. Now my trees are going to need some leaves. So since I only have that green, I'm going to add a little bit of black to that green just to darken it up. And again, with a small brush, I'm just tapping. See that? Just tapping. That same liner brush that I used, I'm using that now just to tap the leaves in. It's so easy with leaves. It's easy to overdo it too. But if you overdo it, it's fine. I most likely will be showing you how I did that, how I fixed it. Again, you're rolling your brush. If you want it thinner, little, and you should always try to leave some sky through the trees, but I have a tendency to just go overboard because I love the leaves. It's so fun. And as you can see, the green in the tree is different from the green of the other trees. And again, this is just going to be the background. Nobody's really going to pay attention to that. They're going to be focusing on the picture of them and then the huge tree. And now I'm adding a little bit of dark into the backgrounds, blending that in. Can't be all one color. And that's typically how you paint trees. You just add a color and then you add another color. And then when I put the highlights in, more of a yellow color because the sun is coming right at the trees. So I'll be throwing some highlights in. But right now I'm just playing with the dark, making it look a little less grassy. And I will end up going in and putting in some more color. But right now, see that little darkness of that tree? Maybe we'll put another tree right about there. Look at that. That's a tall tree. Kind of crooked. Maybe he's thinking on diving into the water. You'd make it a little crooked, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. When you paint, you're painting, you gotta remember trees aren't exactly perfect. If you've ever sat and looked at landscape, things have fallen, branches everywhere. And now let's put the highlights in. As you can see, that looks a lot better. If I shine the light on where I think the sun is coming from, that's where you're going to put the highlights, is what brightens up. So that's why I put the light there. And as you can see, now I'm going in with my yellow, just a little bit of yellow ochre mixed together. I don't want to do too much. I don't want to overload it, but now that's 3 different colors on my tree so far. Look at that. Voila! And then the hardest part for me is going overboard with the red for my birch tree. And almost in every painting I have that. But right now I need to make it look more like a birch tree. So think I'll get my palette knife, a little bit of mixed all those colors together to get a little bit of darker color. And I just kind of kick it in, just a little on the edge of my knife and just basically tap it in. And then I made another tree. And you take your knife and you just clean the paint off. Maybe I should make that bigger. Yeah, there we go, taller tree. And again, if you see, any errors, it's going to be covered with leaves as well. So I didn't finish the second part of that tree because it's going to poke out. The leaves are going to poke out the top behind the big green tree. And while I got my white, maybe I'll do another tree here. Love my palette knife. Hey, look at that. I'll fix my whimsical tree. So it's starting to look more like a tree. Sturdier. Something that Dr. Seuss would make. And if you get too thick like I just did, you can scrape it off and color it up with leaves. Hide it. There you go. Boom. Gone. No boo-boo. If you want to, you can put some branches in with your palette knife just to make it a little more realistic. And I love painting with a palette knife. It's probably one of my favorites. So I'm going to put in the red. Here we go. Is this going to take the attention away from the big focal point? I don't know. I won't know till the end. But again, with a brush, and usually I use round brushes for this. I'm just tapping. Just tapping my tree away. I enjoy painting. It's the most relaxing, probably the most relaxing of all my projects. I get so caught up in everything. And if I make a mistake, it's fine. It really is. Scrape it off and put something else there. But sometimes I need to step away, let it dry so that I can really go in with other things. Bob Ross can do a painting in 30 minutes. It takes me a few days. So, and don't forget the leaves for the other tree that's coming up, where I just cut the bark off in the middle of the painting. See that? Now you've got two trees and they've grown in together. So now we got this little sticky tree, and with a palette knife, I'm going to be going in there and fixing that as well. Should be stopping right now. I think that red is perfect, but I'm not going to. Look at me. Look at me go. Just gonna, yep, muddle that in because now I'm throwing in a little bit of the yellow to make it more fall, which is great, but I'm losing the background of the sky. And that's where I always make my mistake. I'm losing the background of the sky, and then it's just one big blob. But how you fix that is when it's dry, you get some blue paint that match the sky, and then you just draw the sky in between the tree, and it'll break up that tree. I really should stop right there, but no, I'm not going to. Sometimes I just can't control myself when I paint. So, oh, good. Look at me. I'm still going back at that tree. As you can see, I'm rewatching this and basically explaining it. The highlights, yes, the tree needs the highlights. It is very nice. I like putting the yellow in there, but I'm losing my sky. And I do that every time when it comes to that tree. I just love that color. I love the fall. It's my favorite season. So no matter how beautiful the summer, I always need a little tree somewhere. Just my little white birch. All right, so with my palette knife, now I'm going to put in, you know how you have those tall trees that have the pine, and then the rest it just stops somewhere halfway down. With my palette knife, I can do that as well. And I see that I like making my trees with a palette knife, not so much with a brush. But I do mix media, and I will be adding some other elements to this painting that is not paint, which will be interesting. So now I want to bring the red in that tree, and I should have done more instead of that, but I was afraid I would ruin it. And it's not too late to go back and do some more. I may or may not, I don't know. But I need that reflection, so I'm going to pull that down with my fan brush and then lightly go back and forth gently with my big brush. And there is going to be a lot of movement in that water, so I guess it's not a bad idea. And then bring everything back down and this is how you hide your brush strokes. You don't want to see your brush strokes. So I'm going to bring all that stuff back down because I've added. See those strokes? Right there, the big brush just gets rid of those. That's looking good. I think I'm happy now. I really need to let this dry. So let's see. So I do want to put the rocks in, but I kind of want the paint to dry a little bit. I'm going to pull this down more. It's just, I don't know, I'm not getting the reflection I like. And just cleaning that up again with a nice dry brush. Always use a dry brush when you're trying to spread that. I'm pretty happy with this right now. I'm going to let it dry. Again, I will show you the rest of the painting where I put the tree, and they're going to be the focal point. I hope. So this is part one, and I will end up showing you the rest of the painting, but this does have to dry. So like, subscribe, and share, and you'll get to see what I did with the focal point. And I'm sure it's going to turn out beautiful. It's not done